Ding, 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 ding. Okay. Has everybody had dinner? Because we don't want clanging plates. We got Bill Maher coming. 20 years of politically incorrect speech that graces the political discourse in our country and also makes us laugh every Friday night. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bill Maher to the grill.
Thank you very much.
We've got fancy microphones. Okay, so is this it true that Susan Sarandon was in the elevator and
I just saw her in the elevator. It must be true.
Asked you for a joint?
No. Look at how fast a rumor gets started.
Okay, well, that was indeed the rumor, and since I'm a
I
journalist...
saw her in the elevator, and quickly a writer's embellishment happened.
Damn, it was a pretty good headline while it lasted. Okay, well... So, something I sort of wanted to ask you for a long time is, do you consider yourself a political commentator who dabbles in humor, or a comedian who has sidetracked his way into political commentary?
Well, politics was never a sidetrack, but I was always a comedian first and will always be that. And it's been a great It's been a great run on TV for 20 years. I hope it goes on more, but when it stops, it does for everybody, I'll still be able to work the road like I do now.
Well, first of all, it's essential viewing in my household on Friday nights, and I can't tell you what the reaction was. I had so many people say they were. It was interesting how excited they were to learn a little bit more about you, because you're usually doing the interview, and now we get to grill you back a little bit.
Ask me anything. I am an open book.
Okay, here's one. How do you feel about President Obama? You supported him with a very big donation, and he's been something of a disappointment to some liberals.
Yeah, I mean, no president, I think, is perfect for everybody, even the people who supported him. And yes, I could list the places where I've had arguments with him, as a lot of liberals have. The drug war, obviously, is one. Keeping up a lot of Bush's programs in the war on terror, we thought that would get better. But I'm also very mindful that he can't do everything at once. You know, he came into office with probably the worst economy any president's come into since FDR, obviously with the Depression. It wasn't just a bad economy, it was a tire fire. I mean, Bush left a flaming pile of dog shit on the White House steps, and this guy saved us from having a depression. I think that's going to be what history writes. He also got health care through. Every president has tried to do that for the last 100 years. Saved the auto industry, got bin Laden. You know, there's a lot of really good accomplishments. Got the bankers out of being the middlemen for college loans. And we're not quite done. And he's dealt with a level of hate and disrespect I don't think any president has ever had to deal with. So on balance, yeah, I'm certainly fucking glad he got elected and reelected, and I'd do it again with the money.
Okay.
It's a wild crowd you got here, by the way. These people are...
Not like a stand-up crowd. It's like intellectuals. Okay, business intellectuals, if there is such a thing. Well, okay, I'm going to argue with you just... That's what I try to be. But I'm going to argue with you a little bit there. I mean, he is in his second term. This is the moment for him to seize his legacy. Unfortunately, I do watch your show like religiously, even though you're so anti-religious. And, you know, I think you don't hit him very hard on the show.
That's funny, because so many people say the exact opposite to me. Why are you so hard on Obama?
Really?
Yeah. So I think he's probably having the same situation I have. If you get it from both sides, maybe you're doing something right.
Well, I think that people would ask that of you more than others because, and it's one of the things that I personally respect about you so much, is that you are truly a rigorous thinker. And you have changed your mind on issues because,
Sure.
and on very strong political positions based on a different reading of the facts,
well,
right?
it's the great thing about not being a politician is you are allowed to change your mind. when new information comes in, you can change your mind. Politicians are not allowed to do that because if they ever change their mind for any reason, they get accused of flip-flopping and being indecisive. They have to have the exact same thoughts at 60 they had at 18.
Well, there's flip-flopping and flip-flopping. I mean, you killed...
But they get accused of it. I mean, John Kerry got known as a flip-flopper, and he wasn't a flip-flopper. All he said was, I voted for a bill, and then I voted against it. Yes, because they changed the bill. Right. That was all that was happened there, and for the evermore, the guy is known as being wishy-washy.
Right, but then,
he wasn't wishy-washy to the Viet Cong, I'll tell you that.
Okay, but Mitt Romney...
Well, he killed some of them, and, it's good for him. He was in a war.
Mitt Romney, however, was a flip-flopper?
Well, of course. Mitt Romney actually did change what he believed on every single issue, and not in a distant time frame, in a matter of years. He was the governor of Massachusetts not that long ago when he was for the exact same mandated health care program that the president passed. And, of course, he ran against that because now he was running as a very conservative Republican in a different atmosphere. But you can go down any list of issues from abortion to gun control to campaign finance to the environment, and Mitt Romney will have changed his position on that.
That's true. That's complete. I think in some cases flip-flopper is warranted. And change, I mean, that's the challenge of being a politician. You want to be able to change your mind on something.
Yeah, I mean, Obama just did it with Syria. He changed his mind. And I'm glad he did.
Managed to look like a flip-flopper doing it.
I don't agree. I mean, he looks like a flip-flopper if you don't read the backstory, if you don't know that events change. That's why he changed, because Syria put something on the table that wasn't there before. They said, we'll give up the chemical weapons. Now, isn't that a better outcome? That we don't fire a shot and get what we wanted?
Well, yes, if only the Russians hadn't thought of it first. But anyway, we don't have to do...
Who cares who thought of it?
Well, because we're...
Oh, look, I got an applause break.
Well, I think I'm all right. That's fine. I think that we look to our president for leadership, and I think that that's what he was getting dinged on in that case, not about whether it was somebody else's idea first. That's all.
Well, to me, a leader is the one who figures out the best plan and gets the best result. Bluster is for rappers and John McCain. That, to me, is leadership.
John McCain is getting it pretty hard at the grill today, I
to
gotta
be,
say.
have the strength to say, oh, okay, I took a little time. Obama said this often. I don't operate on you people's time frame. I'm not on the 24-hour cycle. I think about things so I get to the right decision. And I'm glad he does. I'm glad he doesn't operate on the media's time frame.
Would you call yourself a liberal today?
On most issues. But I'm not sure people agree all the time what the definition of liberal, conservative, libertarian. I don't think most people actually know what these words mean, and then they wouldn't line up behind them if they did. They just did a survey, and I think something like Republicans, 18% of them were against Obamacare. I mean, only 18% of them were for Obamacare, but when they said the Affordable Care Act, like 10% more, yes, we're for that. They don't even know it's the exact same thing. There was a guy in Kentucky who said they were explaining to him the Affordable Care Act, and he said, well, this is a hell of a lot better than Obamacare.
That's a good one.
This is the new get your government hands off my Medicare. Remember that?
Yes.
The guy who said, get your government hands off my Medicare.
That's true.
Which is kind of funny. Medicare's run.
No, we get that.
That
we
would be the irony there.
Crowd, Bill. It's the smart guys. Okay. So there was a time really when I think that, at least just as an observer of seeing what you wrote and what you said out in the public, you were really truly more of a libertarian. And is that
well, again, I don't know what that word means to different people. Libertarian to me always meant that you think nothing should be illegal as long as it doesn't hurt another person. Rand Paul and his father interpret libertarianism to mean we shouldn't have FEMA. We shouldn't have meat inspections. That's insane. I mean, yes, I guess you could describe that as a radical version of libertarianism, but it's just plain stupid. I mean, I look at a stoplight and go, oh, yes, that's a great way for us to make sure that the cars don't crash into each other. They look at it and see an infringement upon their liberty. And they would like to soar like an eagle right through the windshield because that's freedom. So, I don't really feel I need to backtrack on when somebody else bastardizes a term.
Well, what would you say is the one issue, if there is one issue, on which you were most aware of having changed your own position? And to me, that it really is the
Guns?
On guns?
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of it is because the Democrats changed. I mean, in the 90s, the Democrats were a little more ballsy about what they wanted to do with gun control. Now, to me, whatever they're talking about and they're so excited about, I think they're just wasting their political capital because they love guns too. It's the gun country. The Republicans love them more. They're fetishists. They adore them. But the Democrats also agree that guns are very important, that we must have them so we can go kill animals and have fun as sportsmen. And as long as that's the approach of the liberal party in this country, I don't understand why we're even bothering pretending to move forward on gun control issues that wouldn't change anything anyway. The Democrats, that's the party that wants to have quote-unquote gun control. They want to get rid of about, 150 of the type of maybe 3,000 different guns that are sold in America? Oh, we're losing the crowd. Gun nut? Sorry. It's a good thing we left before we got to Jesus, my friend.
You flip-flopped on Jesus too?
No. Always been a fan.
Okay, so you used to be pro-gun? Or, sorry, I'm trying to figure...
I used to be more with the Democrats because they were ballsier on gun control. Now, as long as they're not going to be fighting for gun control, I'm not with them, and I'm going to keep my gun.
Okay.
As long as the liberal party in this country is not fighting for real gun control, I'm not with them. Real gun control would be arguing that the Second Amendment does not mean what it has become interpreted as. Right. Everybody can have whatever gun they want at all times. I don't want to live in that America. I'd rather live in Canada, or a Canada-like country where the guns are not so, everywhere. But I don't live in that country. I live in the gun country.
So it doesn't sound like you changed your position. It just sounds like you don't want to put your support behind the Democratic Party's position.
Because I mean,
you're for sensible gun control, which is where probably 90% of the country is.
It's
right?
bullshit gun control. I mean, Joe Biden said a couple of months ago, buy a shotgun. Well, if the party that is supposed to be the one against guns is advertising for guns, I have no hope what that party can do on that issue.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. You studied history and economics, was it, at Cornell, right?
English.
English, right, sorry. And did you always just want to do comedy?
I did. I was always wanted to be a comedian, even as a little kid. I watched the comedians on TV, and Johnny Carson and I guess Ed Sullivan when I was little, and I wanted to do that. Looked fun.
And so you went to Cornell?
Well, yeah, I went to college. I wanted to get an education. I wanted to know what I was talking about when I was making people laugh. And I'm glad I went. I'm glad I got that education. I probably wouldn't do the show I was doing if I didn't have it.
So at what point did you find that you were veering more overtly towards taking political stances that were contrarian and less about comedy and more about a political statement?
Well, I've never done that. I mean, I never tried to be a contrarian. My bond with my audience has always been to tell them exactly what I think and not to pull a punch. But I have never, ever taken a stance just to be different or to try to gin up a fight with someone. And as far as politics with the comedy, our show has always been a hybrid of comedy and serious. The panel can get serious, and that's okay. But in areas where it's strictly comedy, the comedy pieces of the show, that's where the comedy has to come first. You know, I'm not going to do a comedy routine on something if the jokes aren't there. So not everyone, you know, always is I think understands what a hybrid show is. That, you know, it moves back and forth between comedy and serious. But I think after all these years, the audience that has stayed with us and grown, I think they like that part of it.
Oh, I think definitely, and I think that you've been kind of at the tip of the spear of this really interesting trend that's happened in which the real political discourse happens in comedy shows. And I say this with some embarrassment as a lifelong journalist, the discussion that ought to be going on around journalistic roundtables is actually going on led by, I'll say like that, a comedian. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's
Yeah, I mean,
embarrassing for
that's-
me as a journalist, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when people talk about journalism and the media, it must be somewhat frustrating because who's in their head when they're thinking about that? I mean, the media is everything from TMZ to Dexter Filkins risking getting his ass shot off over in Iraq.
Love Dex.
And you know, some of the how many correspondents did we lose in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars? I think it's over 100.
And a lot in Syria
Really
as well.
brave, serious, smart people. That's the media and everything in between, going back to, like I said, TMZ. So I think when we talk about the media or journalists, we kind of have to define who we're talking about, because I can talk about them in glowing terms, and like you, I sometimes want to trash them
Well,
because they're different people.
well,
I'm
I'm one of
thinking
them, and you know, have trafficked in both places actually, having come
Right.
from the New York Times, and now I work in entertainment. And sometimes you're dragged toward the celebrity thing where you don't necessarily want to be if you're a serious journalist. I'm actually talking about Washington journalism, which I've never had anything to do with, really.
Right.
And that's its own club and it's its own ecosystem. And I think that that's where you particularly have sort of said the emperor has no clothes, right?
Well, I think, you know, the point that a lot of people make in and out of journalism is that they're too close to the politicians, that they don't really go after them because they want access. And so there's a lot of ass-kissing that goes on instead of asking the tough questions. And I would concur. I think that goes on a lot.
So then I go back to your role is, I understand that people got to laugh, and then you have a whole, you know, you do stand up all the time, and that's great. But it just feels like, no, I mean. It's,
Thanks, Mom.
No, don't say. But, I mean, I don't know if you are, how you take the measure of the impact you have as a singular voice, I would say.
Well, I just hope people, A, are entertained, and B, at least will consider maybe the other point of view if they haven't before. You know, when I travel the country and do the stand-up, as you say, that's, you know, mostly if people are going to pay $70 or $100 or whatever it is to see you, they generally like you a lot to begin with. You know, sometimes people say to me, oh, you were just in Alabama. What was the crowd like? Like everywhere. Bill Maher fans. I would never know where I was if you just dropped me into a theater. I could be in Alaska, I could be in Berkeley. It's all the same because the people who come out to the theater. That's different.
Well, how would you characterize a Bill Maher fan, honestly?
Wise, intelligent, right about everything. No, I mean, you know, they're the people who, they're free thinking.
Do you get people like who hate you? Do you get haters outside any of your stand-up?
Never.
Never?
Like I said, when people have to pay for a ticket, you know, they generally are fans. You know, sometimes you'll get nuts outside the theater. Yes, when I play within 500 miles of Kansas, the God Hates Fags church is usually there to protest me. They will set up a vigil outside of the theater, but they don't get inside the tent. Right. You know. But that's different than the studio audience, and I think the home audience for our television show, which is not, you know, just that kind of rabid fan that wants me to go to the edge. The studio audience we have for real time is much more politically correct.
Well, I've talked to one of your producers some time ago, and he was talking about how hard it is to ride the line And you've talked about it on the show that that's hard to get guests who are willing to come on, and
Much easier than it used to be, but yeah, there are still many guests who won't do the show for what I was just talking about before. I'm not the guy who is going to ask them the ask-kissy question. I'm not there to burnish their image, and they know that, And so, yeah, it's sometimes hard to convince people who only want to be adored to come to my show.
right, and
Because you may not be.
well, and in fairness, if you're right of center, you feel like you might get beat up.
Well, actually, we've for years have now tried to book the rule, not always, a conservative with another conservative, so they're not ganged up on. It does not always happen that way, but mostly we try to even it out. Now, of course, what I can't control is that the audience is a liberal audience. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. I've done it myself, tried to perform to an audience that is conservative. And it sucks because they don't agree with the premise. And if they don't agree with the premise, they're certainly not going to laugh at the punchline. Now, most of the guests on our panel are not comedians, so they're not looking to get a laugh, but it's still a very intimidating factor. I've seen many people change from right before the show to when they go out there, and that audience is intimidating, and they are suddenly a lot more moderate than they were 10 minutes earlier.
Really?
Absolutely.
Can you give an example?
No, but it happens quite frequently.
Anyone we've ever heard of?
Of course. Yes, Republicans who are...
Sorry.
Okay. What if I just hold it like that?
Sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're saying
feel like a
Republicans
porn
who are
star.
intimidated.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I mean, I once did Grover Norquist's luncheon, and it was tough because you're looking out at a sea of people who from the get-go do not agree with anything you think or say. So I have the utmost respect for Republicans who come on my show, stick to their guns, and are not intimidated by the rabble.
Was there ever a time that you might have been on the same side as Grover Norquist?
Of course.
Less taxation or no taxation or
I-
too much government
I
interference?
said this year that the Democrats could lose me. I didn't mean they could lose me like permanently on every issue, but there is a point where they can ask for too much. Absolutely. There are many issues where the Republicans are the ones who changed. Healthcare is a great example. I mean, in the 90s, Obamacare was their plan.
Right.
That was Bob Dole's plan. So cap and trade is another one. It used to be the Republican way to handle the environmental problems we have was cap and trade. Now that's the Democrats' plan, and the Republican plan is deny it and pretend it doesn't exist.
Do politicians try to curry favor with you?
Sure, some of them, yeah.
They call you and...
Well, I don't know if they call me. I don't think they have the ability to do that. But, I mean, when I run into them, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think all politicians want as much favorable coverage as they can get.
Okay, it seems that you have now, and thankfully for all of us, because we were all the beneficiaries, I think, you have competitors. You started with Politically Incorrect, I guess, 1993.
Yes.
So 20 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll give them a round of applause for 20 years. When Jon Stewart was a gleam in the eye of your
I
oldest...
think he was on MTV then.
Yeah, right. Doing comedy, not politics.
Well, he had a talk show, didn't he? Wasn't it? I think I remember
I don't
doing
know.
it. It was like a regular talk show.
I don't remember. I was too young, Bill.
Well, I wasn't.
But now you kind of have you do have competition for that particular niche, right? Of like political humor, political satire, that he does very successfully. Stephen Colbert does very successfully, and then you have to find a different way into it on Friday after they've done it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Not really. I mean, first of all, I don't know if there are enough shows on politics. There's many more shows that are singing contests, aren't there? There's a few shows. I don't know why people can't enjoy all of them, and many people do. And but I certainly never worry about covering it the same way they do. I mean, they're much more predictably liberal on things, and they just don't go places I go. They're not atheists, you know. They're not potheads. You know, they're just different kind of show.
Child lovers.
Yeah, they're child lovers, breeders, exactly.
Breeders.
So
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's some crossover, but I think they're very different shows, and you know, my audience always tells me that.
Okay, well, they are.
But we're more alike each other than we are any of us like Dancing with the Stars, if that's what you're.
Yeah. Yes, that was the other comp I was thinking of. Yeah. So is it ever frustrating for you that they get a lot of attention? I'm not saying you don't get a lot of attention, but you know, they're in the water cooler conversation. You know, Jon Stewart seems, you know, to wake up and win an Emmy all the time, although Stephen Colbert did win last night, and you're nominated consistently. I think you've been nominated for 32 Emmys, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So is that ever frustrating for you?
I think it was years ago. I mean, at a certain point, you understand that if you're going to really be the brave one, you're going to piss off too many people to win the awards.
You think you've pissed off too many people to win the Emmy?
You know, it doesn't really benefit me ever to talk about the Emmys. It's a no-win situation, you know. So, you know, first of all, I'll say one thing, and then maybe we can not talk about it. Sure. It's winning an Emmy. People talk about it like it's the Giants winning the Super Bowl. It's not the same thing. When the Giants win the Super Bowl, it's because they actually beat another team. So they are actually the best team. This is the opinion of 10 people who watch a tape. You know, I wish the 10 people voted for us every year, but they vote a different way. But you know, I don't think our ratings are less. I don't think the quality of our show is less. And yes, I do think probably pissing people off has a lot to do with losing. Now you speak.
I'm afraid I'm going to get jumped out. Okay. Well, I don't know who you're pissing off or how. I mean, you have your
You're
liberal
kidding,
views.
right? You don't know how I piss people off?
In the voting academy, not so much, but
Lots of people wouldn't vote just because of 9/11, and they still think I'm with the terrorists. Lots of people hate it when you make fun of religion because it's a religious country. Just those two things, you know.
I thought we were all godless liberals in Hollywood, but I could be wrong about that. Not so much.
It's a religious country.
Let me ask you, since you brought up the 9/11 question, which of course to me was a watershed moment that you said, just to remind our audience at the time, that the 9/11 terrorists, you were agreeing with someone on your show at the time, Politically Incorrect, that the terrorists weren't cowards for having flown their jets into the World Trade Center, and you immediately became a magnet for this incredible hostility, and as if you had said something deeply unpatriotic or something, and the show was canceled, right?
Not immediately, but you know.
in the aftermath of that,
Yes,
sometime after that. And I
Yeah,
remember
I mean-
the White House spokesman. You know,
Oh, yeah,
it's unusual
Ari
to take it on the
sure.
chin when you're not
Ari
in politics.
Fleischer, yeah, sure.
Looking back on that now, how do you feel about that moment and your having said that at that moment?
Well, it was true on September 10th, and it was true on September 12th. And, you know, it wasn't that long. I'm talking like a few months afterwards when lots of people came around to writing and saying it was true. It was just uncomfortably true at that moment. But, you know, lots of other people had said almost the exact same thing.
It
You know,
actually
people
wasn't even
like
you who brought it up. It was your guest who had said it.
Condoleezza. Well, he said.
It was Dinesh D'Souza, right?
Yeah, he said they were warriors or something like that, and I concurred and said, right, you know, you're not cowards when you stick with the suicide mission. Anyway, it's not even a controversial statement. It has no moral dimension, and it's just a statement of fact, really. But, you know, this is not a country that does well with blatant truth, especially
Or
when...
inconvenient ones. As
Yeah,
some people
exactly. So, you know, it came out better for me because I certainly like the show I'm doing and the network I'm on a lot more now than I did then. I wish I had had the guts to quit that show. I mean, we've been on 9 years with Politically Incorrect. It was fun. It was a cute show, but I should have been moving to the next level on my own instead of having to get fired to do it.
You wish you would have quit that show?
Yeah, I think if I had the balls, I should have just, instead of waiting for that moment, should have went, yeah, you know, this Politically Incorrect is a cute show, but it's only a half hour with 4 guests, none of them who have to have a brain in their head, trying to talk politics. I should have kicked it up to the level where we're at now, which is a much better show. But I didn't have the guts, and I was on ABC, and it was fun, and I was having fun, and so, you know. But you know what? When God opens one window...
I want to ask you about this show on HBO that you produce that I find really interesting, Vice.
Correct.
It's a really... Vice fans, yes. It's the first really new way of doing news that I have seen since I can remember. Can you tell us a little bit like how you got involved in it and why?
Well, I take no credit for that show. I mean, you know, I'm an executive producer, and I try to help them in any way I possibly can, but they're the ones who have the guts to travel to these godforsaken shitholes around the world, and that's what's the fun of the show for the viewer, is that you are seeing a world, because Americans are very myopic, you know. They very often don't even know what's going on in their country. They only know local. You know, most cities have like 2 hours of local news that outranks, you know, in the ratings when the nightly news comes on, and even the nightly news only has 1 slug of real news before you get to the bullshit about the one-legged skier. So, as far as like what's going on in the rest of the world, they are really clueless. So it's just such an eye-opener for people to see conditions and events that are happening in other parts of the world that they had no idea about. And these guys, they're just so brave. They get all the credit. I mean, to even go to some of these places.
How did you get involved?
Well, you know, Vice was a magazine and a website, and they were doing very well, but they wanted a broader platform, and they came to HBO. And HBO, in that meeting, both of them said, you know, Bill would be a good natural person to sort of like shepherd you into the television arena so that he could take some of his expertise, because he's been in television for this long, and try to make this into more of a TV show than what it is now. But again, I mean, these guys get all the credit. I am.
So do you have any involvement with it, or?
Well, yeah, I have plenty of involvement with it. I just don't go to those places.
You don't go to North Korea with Dennis Rodman.
No, but I look at the footage.
That was a great segment.
No, I look at the footage when it comes back. I try to shape it with them. But you know, again, I am not the brave one traveling to you know, the oil fields of Sudan, which, you know, these guys, the more dangerous a place it is, the more they want to go. They're crazy.
Well, it's very interesting for me as a former foreign correspondent to compare their version of doing Tahrir Square and the version you'll see on CNN or NBC News. It's interesting. You don't necessarily learn something different, but you know that it's going to engage certainly young people in a way that NBC News has no idea how to do. You know, so
no, when HBO was trying to decide whether to pick it up, and somebody in the meeting said, well, it's kind of like a 60 Minutes for the new generation. And I said, are you kidding? That the 60 Minutes for the new generation would have been in 1980. They needed a new 60 Minutes generation. We've skipped like 4 generations. I mean, between Shane on Vice and Bob Schieffer is at least 78 years. Difference. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's amazing that nobody did a show like this earlier. A kind of a hip 60 Minutes.
Well, it's a little bit out there, and I don't know what the insurance issues are involved or what. But okay. All right. I want to ask you one-word reactions to the following.
Oh, jeez.
Or no, just, sorry, gut reaction. Doesn't have to be a word.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Okay, here we go. Drugs.
I like them.
Porn.
Never been a giant fan. I've never, ever looked at a porn site on a computer.
Children.
But I like sex. Children. Children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. That's what I say. No, I've never had that chip in me that wanted children, but I sure see it in a lot of people. I've known guys, I've known a lot of Hollywood players who had never really wanted to settle down, but they really did want to be a dad. And they found a way to do both. Not settle down and be a dad.
Guns.
We covered guns.
I know, but it was on my list. All right.
Well, interviewers have to roll with that, Sharon.
True,
They
that's
have to
true. That's true. I can learn from you. So, do you know who you're going to... Are you supporting anybody yet for the 2016 election?
We don't know who's running. How
Well,
could I support? Well,
let's-
obviously it's going to be Hillary for the Democrats. I can't imagine that there'll be someone, considering what's happened to the Republican Party, that would be preferable to me to vote for against Hillary, who is much more of a centrist, I think, than Obama, much more of a hawk, although he's pretty hawkish. I'm not giant fans of the Clintons, but compared to, again, the Republican Party, it's not even close. So I'm guessing it's going to be Hillary versus, the interesting race will be within the Republican Party, because there is that civil war going on between the potty-trained Republicans and the people from the Tea Lagoon, and we'll see who it's either going to be Chris Christie from the old school, or one of those new ones like Ted Cruz or Rand Paul. So
Couldn't a Bush make another appearance?
yes, Bush is an old school type of Republican. Jeb Bush, yeah, he may very well run. And when have we ever had a bad experience with a Bush?
But one might wonder if there's, the Republican Party seems in such a bad place that at some point they'll need to remake themselves into a political force that's more in touch with.
You would think
more
so, but
mainstream.
we've been saying that for quite a few years now. And I don't know, maybe they don't care that much anymore about winning the White House, and they just want to be a congressional party, because the way the districts are gerrymandered, they can hold on to the House probably for a very long time. They control the House handily, and yet in the last election, they lost. If you look at the total number of votes, more House votes were cast for Democrats. But because of the way the districts are gerrymandered, they were able to keep those seats. So they don't really have to worry about pleasing the majority of the American people, and they don't worry about it. One thing they fear about Obamacare, probably the main thing they fear about it, is that people like it. And it's working. It's bending the curve in the right direction economic-wise already, which is the reason why we passed it. And they're afraid that once people, taste this heroin of health care, they're not going to want to give it up. Well, of course they're not. People like to not be sick. It's a crazy thing with human nature.
Is there any circumstance you could conceive of in which you yourself would run for office?
Of course not. I'm the last person who could ever win office. They would only have to show any tape of any show I've ever done, and there are 10 things in there that would disqualify me.
But, crazier things have happened.
No, they haven't. No. First of all, no atheist could ever win office
Sarah
in this country.
Palin was, our vice presidential candidate, so,
Well, that's she was chosen for that. Nobody elected her to the high office. She was number 2 on the ticket, and she's not an atheist. She's in line with the Jesus freaks who are the majority in this country.
Well, hold on. If we were talking about California,
Well, they weren't going to win California.
No, I'm not talking about Palin. I'm talking about you. There are places where not being a religious person are not necessarily
Not really.
a political liability.
Well, then why are there 0 atheists in Congress? They are the least represented people in this country, because the number of people now who say they do not believe in any religion and either agnostic or atheist is approaching 15% in this country. But the representation isn't 15%. 15% is a bigger minority than blacks, Jews, Latinos, gun nuts, whatever minority you want to say. 15% is higher, but we have 0 representation. But that is changing. People are coming out of the closet.
As atheists.
Absolutely. I had Billy Crystal on Friday night. His book is like, no, I can't really believe in a God. You know, who would have ever thought about Billy Crystal? They're out there. They're thinking it. They're just afraid to say it. But that's changing. It'll be the new gay marriage.
But that's not honestly that. But that's not honestly what would keep you from running. I mean, would it ever really interest you, seriously?
It does not interest me, but it would also, what is the point of running a race that you could never win, that your opponents would have a field day? I mean, you say you watch the show every Friday night, you must see that there are, every week, there are just 10 things that are absolutely qualifying for me to run for high office.
Well,
I mean, running for office is all about being political. I'm all about being not political.
Well, sometimes I think that could work in some cases, but okay, I take your point.
You're dreaming on.
That's possible. It's
dreaming.
possible. Wanted to ask
But
you,
I would never want to be in that. I mean, first of all, you got to get up in the morning, and you have people are scrutinizing you even more than they do in show business, and they follow you everywhere, and you have to wear a suit and tie, and kiss babies and shake hands. It's just never going to happen.
Well, okay, but that brings me to my next question, which has to do with the scrutiny that everyone is under all the time, not just politicians. You're a big tweeter. You've got a massive Twitter account, lots of followers.
Few million. Yeah.
Talk for a minute about your relationship with Twitter. Is it an authentic relationship?
Well, it's definitely authentic in the sense that only I ever write it. I mean, people don't write it for me. I don't do it every day. I don't think I've done it in a few days now. I mean, I do it authentically in the sense I do it when I have something that I think is appropriate to tweet. And if I don't, fuck it, I don't do it that day. I don't want to be owned by it. And if I had to do it, on some sort of schedule, I would resent it. And I like it. I like doing it. I like that connection. The piece we did at the end of our show Friday night was about Twitter. So we'll see how big of a fan you really are now.
Okay, you got to forgive me. I had the grill coming.
You
HBO
just
Go.
said you watch it every Friday. I'm just saying.
You know what?
But it was about the people on Twitter who are such haters and how much they put off people who we would like to all read our Twitter feed, but it's so full of morons with their vitriol that it just makes you not want to do it.
You get a lot of vitriol back at you over Twitter.
Everybody does. That was the point of the piece.
No, Bill, not everybody does.
No, everybody does. That's the point, is that if you ask any celebrity, and we read some of them.
Oh, every celebrity. Okay, well. I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Right. People with 8 followers who are all their close friends don't get vitriol. But Jonah Hill gets vitriol, and there's absolutely no reason for it, was the point.
And so you're saying it's kind of a mixed blessing. You'll engage in it.
Well,
and
I'm
then
just saying I wish it could be more of a two-way street, but I have to be in a very good mood to wade through, the bullshit. And Joy Behar was there, and Chris Hayes, and we both had this. And Billy, we were all saying the same thing, that we all used to read it, and we all can't now, because you have to wade through so much hate. And Joy was saying, I just want to say to these people, why are you following me? If you just want me, if you to tweet die, you should commit suicide or whatever they tweet. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it's fun to watch your Twitter feed, but I could see. And you're not a Facebooker. You're just a Twitterer.
Yeah, I don't understand Facebook. I mean, I don't need it.
There's a thing called Pinterest too. You might really like that.
What's that?
Pinterest.
Pinterest. No, I don't know what that is.
It's for ladies who like to pin stuff. to their digitally,
Oh, I see.
women mainly.
No, I don't know. I mean, Facebook, I mean, why would I want to keep up with people who I cut off purposefully? You know, like people from high school, and, you know, I mean, I just want to do that. I mean, if I want to relate with somebody, you know, I'd see my friends. I love my friends, but I don't feel any need to relate to them on Facebook. I just don't get it. I really don't. I don't get the whole thing that you have to like share everything in your life with, like, you know, maybe it's an age thing, but, you know, I mean, the idea that before we had this technology, you know, I'd rush over to your house with a picture that I took yesterday. Hey, Sharon, look at this picture. It's me yesterday.
Or not, yeah.
I'm late. I got to go run this picture over to another guy's house I know and show it to him. I mean, just because I can do that electronically, there's no attraction for me. I don't get it.
So would you say that the show you're doing, Real Time with Bill Maher, is that the most fun you've had? I mean, is that sort of really, you've created that
I love
alchemy
my
of-
job. Yeah. I mean, I think stand-up is the most fun I have. I mean, that to me is still the pinnacle of just having the most fun you can have, because it's all comedy. I mean, it's all, you know, laugh out loud comedy for 90 minutes. And, you know, the crowd is crazy, amped up, and it's just fun. But the show's fun because it's different every week. You know, it's different news and different guests and a real challenge. I mean, it kicks my ass every week working on it. But that's the great thing about doing a once-a-week show, is you can try to make it into a more polished, you know, gem of an entity. That's your goal. Versus when I did an every night show, anybody who does an everyday show will tell you, you can only make an everyday show so good. You just don't have time. It's off the fly, and that's the charm of those kind of shows. You know, David Letterman made that his hallmark, was that, you know, we're just, you know, kind of took over the studio, and we're going to use the camera guy and the, you know, the AD, and we're going to just be on the street and talk to people, whatever. We're going to throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. That's a good, I mean, there is great charm to that, but it's the difference between playing baseball, which you play every day, and I play football, basically. I have a game once